Joining us right now, the founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, also the author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Jasser.
Dennis, thanks for having me back. It's always great to be with you.
Give us your reaction to Obama, his administration's decision last week to begin arming the Syrian rebels.
Well, for those of us that have been asking for this for over 2 years, it's, we'll take what we can get. We've always wished we had a stronger commander-in-chief to be leading this because it's not going to be an easy road to hoe, but they'll take what they can get. And if you ask sort of why now, the recent victory in southwestern Syria in this town of Qusayra, in which there was another massacre last week, the government was going to consolidate and move up to Aleppo, where the real stronghold is of the rebellion. Mm-hmm. And if that goes, the rebellion will pretty much be on its way to being over. So they're trying to tilt it back towards the rebels. And to tell you that, let me give you two signs that you know that this was the right thing to do. Over 100 officers have defected just in the past 2 days in Syria, intelligence is telling us. Number one. Number two, Iran has openly said now they're going to start not covertly but overtly providing soldiers, and which tells you that Assad's army is not enough for what's going on. And secondly, Iran has a lot to lose. So it's too bad we don't have a president that knows how to articulate what the regional stakes are and talk about Iran as the real evil empire here.
Inside Syrian baseball with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Extrapolate on what Iran has to lose, Dr. Jasser.
Well, Iran is seeing that right now with this so-called Arab Spring. They've got a chance at really controlling the region, but yet, on the other hand, they're losing part of it. So they're trying to create the Shiite crescent that extends from Iran to Iraq to Syria and to Hezbollah. Now, since we pulled out of Iraq, basically functionally, Iraq was functioning as a transmission of arms and intelligence into Syria, and they had great communications with Hezbollah through that whole crescent across that northeast corner of Middle East, North Africa area. And if they lose Syria to this rebellion and Assad, their ally, disappears, they've lost connection with Hezbollah. All reports are that Hezbollah will basically end up withering on the vine and lose control of Lebanon over the next 5 to 10 years. While if they consolidate and defeat this rebellion, their next move will be to put pressure on Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and elsewhere.
The stakes as high as they can be. We're talking to Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. You can follow him on Twitter at Zuhdi Jasser, and the website for the American Islamic Forum for Democracy is aifdemocracy.org. Had it been, and I obviously don't follow it as closely as you do, Dr. Jasser, had it been delineated earlier on that the red line, the only red line, was the use of chemical weapons, or how precise had the White House been in this before saying that indeed was the red line that had been crossed, the use of chemical weapons on their own people in Syria?
It was pretty precise because everybody glommed onto it because it was the only thing President Obama had said would herald the intervention of American forward beyond humanitarian aid. And many of us talked about Israeli intelligence, British intelligence, French and others, physicians' data, et cetera, that showed chemicals were used back in March, and repeated evidence of actually multiple uses. And now all of a sudden they come out and say, well, the reason we're doing this is because 150 people died and the CIA and others have confirmed it. Well, many intelligence services confirmed it, and I think President Obama was waiting. And I'll tell you one other thing. What happened last week wasn't the chemical red line that President Obama gave us as his reason for helping, but Saudi Arabia and Jordan, who are now controlling most of the arming of the rebels, said, you know what? You either help us here, or we are not going to allow you to have any role in the future of Syria, and we will close you out of a foreign policy in the region. So basically now you'll see us, we have troops now in Jordan who are doing operations and training, and if we do a no-fly zone, it'll probably be based out of Jordan. So he basically had his card pushed. I mean, if there's ever an example of President Obama leading from behind, it's exactly what we saw in the last week.
So he had a CYA card dropped on him as far as Syrian futures by the Saudis.
Exactly.
We're talking to Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. What's your gut tell you? The intervention too late, or cavalry coming over the hill just about at the last moment might work?
Well, just as in Bosnia, it can never be too late. There was almost 100,000 dead. The rebels they're not going to give up. They're not going to go to the peace table. So Assad's army either needs to resign and give up, or they're going to go to the death in this war, because his regime is not anything that can be made peace with. So I think it's better to help them now better than never, and have no role whatsoever in a post. There will be a post-Assad Syria, but the question is at what human toll.
As I glance up at the TV peripherally situated in my studio, I see Obama walking with camera and Lochside somewhere in Ireland. I'm reminded that the G8 meeting convenes in Ireland today, I guess. Russia has promised to veto a no-fly zone. Talk about the importance of Russia's role in this conflict going forward.
Russia has been basically poking Iran from behind. They have huge economic interests with Iran and Syria, and that's why they've continued to arm Assad, actually providing cash to keep his economy alive. And they've continued with the old Cold War formula and calculus in the region, where any abandonment of their old allies in the region would weaken their presence. And Putin has proven that he really doesn't care about anything humanitarian, that he will continue to support thugs and those that are inflicting genocide on their people just to counter America. And unfortunately, we don't have a president that really is taking him to task for that at all. I mean, Dennis, even our allies, Britain and France, who have been pushing us to do this for over a year, now are backing away and letting us do it. I mean, if you look back, President Bush or President Reagan would have never allowed them to do that, and said, you know what, now that we're arming the rebels, you need to also put your 2 cents in and help us from NATO.
Yeah, stay right by our side. Don't fall off our back shoulder. We're talking to Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. What do we know about, let's flip it to Iran for a second. What do we know about the incredible Rouhani, the magician act out of the Borscht Belt? Now, tell me about Hassan Rouhani, president-elect.
Yeah, I think that's a good term, magician, because he keeps getting labeled as moderate. I mean, there's nothing moderate about this guy other than his vitriol about the West is sometimes interrupted by him saying we should sit down, and he talked about pragmatism and that their economy really is suffering from the sanctions. So he says, let's do a dance with the West, let's not abandon them, versus Jalali and his predecessor Ahmadinejad, who are more extreme, basically call a spade as far as they see it, and their fascism is on the front menu, and they call the West a great Satan, etc. So to call them a moderate is absurd. The real moderates were eliminated from the ballot. Only the supreme leaders' sympathizers were left on the ballot by Iran's real power, which is their clerical Supreme Council. So these guys are simply tools, and the so-called moderate tool that won is actually, I think, more dangerous. Because you remember in the 90s, we had Fatemi, who came around and was doing interfaith work, and the governor of Massachusetts at the time, Romney, very appropriately said, I'm not going to give this guy security. And he was criticized by the left because they said, oh, he's moderate, etc. And as we've learned, these moderates don't do anything towards change, but simply anesthetize the West into thinking they're moderate.
When I watch Turkey, I don't know, I get an image of Tiananmen Square and the kids standing up to the tank. I'm wondering if that's coming soon, the tank's rolling. Government's now threatening to deploy the army to end the civil unrest in Turkey, right?
Well, Turkey, Dennis, I can't tell you how important what's happening in Turkey is. For people that say that Islamists, we can't help either side because the Islamists will run the Middle East for forever. Turkey's an example of the evolution of what happens when the Islamists get in control. Eventually, they're revealed to be theocrats and thugs. The populations will not like them. We're seeing this in Egypt. Egypt may even have a revolution again on June 30th, the annual anniversary of the election of Morsi. The people are pushing back. This wasn't just about a tree. This was about a population that's tired of getting the media shut down. Media that covered these demonstrations were being shut down and arrested. It's about religious freedom for Christians, for the Alevis, who are 10 to 15 million. I mean, this is a major thing happening in Turkey against political Islam. And finally, you start to see sort of the 2.0 revolution that's happening, and I think Turkey will lead the way for the rest of the Middle East.
Give me a percentage out of the 100% pie as far as public support for the protesters in Turkey. What do you rate the percentage at, Zuhdi? How many people in the population supporting the protesters in Turkey?
Well, that's an amazing question, because if Erdogan wasn't such a narcissistic fool, he could have actually just sort of let them demonstrate. The demonstrators didn't have more than 30 to 40% to start with. Now they're saying it's 50 to 60, and Erdogan's popularity, if he actually had an election in the next year, he may not win again, which I think is a major shift.
Sometimes less is more. We've been talking to Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. You can follow Dr. Jasser on Twitter at Dr. Dr. Zuhdi, Zuhdi Jasser, Jasser. The website for his organization, the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, is aifdemocracy.org. Thank you for your time, Dr. Jasser.
Anytime, Dennis. Thanks so much for covering this. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, it seems to be hitting the fan there. I thought I best be serious with Doc Jasser today and get some news out there.